So while Federalist Paper 10 makes a theoretical argument, Federalist number 51 makes a mechanical one. It talks about exactly how we're going to do this. And it does so through two basic principles: the creation of a separation of power and checks and balances. Basically, if we split the powers, responsibilities, and authority of government into a number of different branches, while simultaneously giving each branch the ability to check the power of all other branches, then you'll avoid any one branch becoming too powerful, and it'll slow down our government. The other idea is ambition will counteract ambition. You get a bunch of ambitious, powerful people in government, and they'll counteract each other. That ambition will counteract the ambition of others. People will fight, and they'll cancel each other out in many ways. A quick note, this slide here presents a graphical representation of how each branch can check the powers of each other. I'll go ahead and post this on the course webpage for this chapter, but the main idea here is that every branch has the authority to affect the actions and decisions of the other two. You should study this and be aware of it for the quiz because it's going to be important to know how the legislative branch can check the executive, and the executive can check the judicial branch, and the judiciary can check the legislative branch, and then go back around the triangle in the opposite direction. So I'll post this on the webpage. Read it, learn it, love it. While we talked about a lot of the government ideas, I want to talk now about the foundations for the national free enterprise economy, and some of the ways that the Constitution protects capitalism and protects contract rights, property owners, etc. This slide has a few clauses here that you should be aware of that affect our system of government and our economy. They're important to know both for the quiz and for life, so I'd recommend that you write them all down and remember them. The first one I have is Article 4, Section 1, the full faith and credit requirement. What this says is that a contract created in one state is valid in all states. This requires states to recognize the contracts of others and then firms up property rights. So we can't have that thing you see in old-timey westerns where the criminal is on the stagecoach or on his horse trying to cross state lines to avoid being arrested by the sheriff. And, oh no, if he crosses state lines, we can't get him. What happens in Montana stays in Montana, the old expression. This means the states are all unified under a strong federal government, and if you have a contract in one state, it's valid in all states. You can't just run away from it. The second one is Article 6, Section 1, the Supremacy Clause, which, as we said earlier, states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land and that all laws are subordinate to it. So states can't pass laws to try to override the Constitution, help people out, interfere with a national free enterprise economy. The third one is Article 4, Section 2, the Privileges and Immunities Clause. What this states is that residents of one state shall not be discriminated against by other states. Basically, every citizen has equal rights regardless of what state you're from, where you are. So Virginia can't discriminate against people from Maryland, for example. The last part of the Constitution I want to talk about today is the Bill of Rights. Some of the delegates were reticent to sign on to the Constitution unless it explicitly outlined rights that people had. The argument being that, look, we need to protect things like freedom of speech, freedom of religions, freedom to own guns, etc., etc., and we want to make sure that no one reads this as, well, the Constitution can take these things away. However, there's debate about this because other people feared that listing certain rights would demonstrate that these are the only rights that exist. So if we outline, 10 amendments to the Constitution here, people are going to come back later and say, just because I didn't mention it now means that I can take it away later. The Constitution's not supposed to be meant to do that. So there's debate on whether we should list certain rights that can't be taken away by the government. As a fix, the framers created what's known as the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments to our Constitution. It's important to note, and we'll talk about this more in the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties chapters, that these rights were initially only protected from the federal government, meaning that states could still restrict them as much as they wanted. We'll talk about the process of incorporating these rights later, but it shows an incredible fear of the of federal governments, and incredible faith in the state governments. This final slide here, another graphic I'll post on the webpage, shows the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. these are important to know. They're very historical, but as well as they sort of set up the most basic rights of our government, things that, back in the day, the founding fathers wanted us to protect. It talks about things like freedom of speech, the press, assembly, religion, the right to bear arms, rights to a fair trial, right to due process, protection from cruel and unusual punishment, things like that. You should memorize all these, I think, again, both for life and for the quiz. So I would take a minute, write these down, prepare, and life will be good. On that, that's all I have for Section 2 with the Constitution. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon for Lesson 3.